So anybody that's watched any of my videos probably has a sense that I love a good parallel. I love a good parallel story that I can bring back to today or some current situation and use that for a lesson. So I'll do that here. So I'll start with parallels. So Nazi Germany, World War II, relatively well known, kind of common knowledge that a good bit of the source, if you will, of Hitler's rise and what happened in Germany and ultimately in World War II could be sourced back to World War One. And when the Germans lost the war, the Allies at that time were in a position to punish Germany, and they took it, and they punished them pretty severely. In terms of losing a lot of their military and the money that they owed and the territory that they lost. And, if you think back to that time or you read up on it, it fits into this category that comes up often where people feel justified. The logic is sound, the math is sound. It's not that they're being thoughtless, they're actually being thoughtful, and it comes out to a relatively clear answer. Like in this case, Germany caused so much pain and destruction and death that we are going to punish them. They deserve to be punished. And you can even go a step further and you think, we want to deter them or anybody from doing this ever again, so we are going to really drop the hammer on them. And the logic is there, little l logic, and it seems sound. But the principle of balance, which I talk often about, there is a balance that needs to happen. And that's what happened in Nazi Germany and in World War II. They were punished so severely that the people became so upset and angry and jaded and disenfranchised and all those things that when somebody like Hitler rose and nationalism came in and they wanted to be proud and they wanted to feel strong again, they were so susceptible to it. And in many ways, the result was so much worse for France and England and the US and everybody, right? It felt right at the time, but it ended up in a much worse situation. Parallel. Back to today, and you can parallel to a lot of things, but not getting into all the politics of it and the details, it looks as if the Democrats are going to win the Senate, in effect, right? So they'll have control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, obviously. And here's where the parallel comes in. When I think of that, I think of it in a couple ways. One, it feels a little bit like that. If you are, well, anybody, but if you're a Republican or a conservative and you're looking at this and you're angry or you're disgusted and you can't believe it happened, to some extent, it's a similar concept, right? No matter what your politics are, the last 4 years have been pretty divisive. Republicans have been in power by and large. Trump has been a very strong figure, and he's passed a lot of policies, he's passed a lot of rules that felt good at the time. It felt good, it felt justified, it felt logical, it felt thoughtful in that he was elected. The things, whether it be around climate change or the Iran nuclear pact or all sorts of different things, trade deals, it felt like, hey, yeah, this is what we should be doing and we have the opportunity, so we should do it. We should take advantage of this, and we have the right and we're justified to do all this stuff. And in the moment it feels right and good and what you should be doing. But there's balance, and you reap what you sow. So the fact that Democrats now took full control and they won Georgia for the first time in however long, it shouldn't be a shock. This is what happens. This is how it plays out. So what's the moral in this story? You have to be thoughtful at a deeper level. You have to be more sophisticated. You have to think longer term and a few levels out to say, hey, I could do this. It feels right to do this, but what's the potential implication? What's the potential consequence? And really, when I think of it today, I look at the Democrats and I say, okay, now you're in that position. You are France or England from World War I. You are the Republicans from 4 years ago. You now have the power. And you have every justification, and the math checks out and the logic seems clear that you should fucking drop that fucking hammer. And you could change all the policies you want. You can rub everybody's face in it. And you can make all those Republicans and conservatives that you were so mad at for the last 4 years pay for what they did. And that feels right. And it feels like what you should do. But what's the consequence? What's the long-term, second, third, fourth level consequence of that? And at the end of the day, you see this pattern play out so often at a micro level and at a macro level. And it comes back to something I've talked about so much. Somebody has to break the cycle. Somebody has to be willing to break that pattern and say, I am in a position of power. I can exploit that power. I can use that power, not even in a deliberately bad way, but in a way that feels right, that feels logical and justified to me. But I'm not going to take that easy route. I'm going to think bigger and better than that and try and do the long-term right thing. And my brother reminded me of this. Perhaps the best and maybe only example I could think of, although I'm sure there's more, is someone like a Nelson Mandela. somebody who had every reason to be angry and to seek vengeance, right? In jail for 27 some odd years, a victim of horrible racism and apartheid and all those things that were happening in that country. But when he got out, and maybe it was that time to reflect because he was in jail for so long, he realized and recognized, I'm going to make this work. I could take the easier route, the justified route, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take the route that's going to build something. It's going to build a foundation that's going to stand much longer. I'm not going to allow that other side to kind of bounce back and that balance to kick in. It's just going to keep the cycle going. And that's what we need to do. All of us, every day in our lives individually, but particularly in this moment in U.S. history and politics, I look at it and I say it's another perfect example. And if you're not a Democrat, right, if you're a Republican, it may be very easy for you if the Democrats do break bad to feel like, well, look, they're doing it to us now for 4 years. Wait till we get back in 4 years. We're going to do it. Somebody's got to break the cycle. If we want what's actually better for all of us in a country, somebody has to break the cycle.